Hello and welcome back if you've been following along, and if you're brand new to my channel, welcome to my journey here. I hope you enjoy this video. If you do, give me a thumbs up and hit subscribe so you don't miss out on anything. I have recently started a new series, and so I've been working the last few days on this. I did a couple of video teasers. If you saw my last series, I kind of put them in there, and so there's 2 out there, I think, already. And what you'll be looking for to find this this bunch of videos is a recycled book page challenge. So the last couple of projects that I did, I was working on altered books, 2 altered book keepsake journals that I did. And I figured I've been tearing out all these pages, and now I have piles of book page. So I wanted to give myself a challenge, and you, if you'd like to join me, to make some kind of journal out of just book page for the paper. And by that I mean, if it could be different size books that you've ripped it out of, just paper that you've torn out of a book for another project and you don't, you want to recycle. I'm also going to let myself use other recycled materials. I can manipulate this any way I want. So I'm going to be using, paints and all that kind of stuff. But I don't want to let myself use any purchased decorative papers. So that was kind of my idea, just to make myself get a little more artistically challenged. I am not an artist, is in a painter, drawing, any of that kind of thing. So for me, this is a real challenge, and I want to learn and grow. So I thought it might be a perfect way to mix it up. The other thing is book pages, one color. You get a variation depending on the age of your different books and the different books things came out of. But other than that, it's black and white. So that also challenges you. So I decided I better do a quick video here of kind of where I'm at and my thought processes, in case you're joining me and you're getting kind of stumped about, okay, where do I even begin? Because that's kind of where I was. So I decided in that the second video, which was the one where I did the stacked envelope junk journal, that's where I decided that's the type of journal I was going to do. I originally was going to put it into a book, a recycled cover of a Reader's Digest that I have that's empty. I was going to do that, and then somebody asked me if I would do a tutorial on doing the stacked envelope junk journal again, how to actually put it together. So I thought, well, I'm in the middle of working on book page, so I'll just do that, and then it'll kind of combine the 2. So the first thing I did then, and I kind of have a mess here. I don't even want to take this apart to show you that my stacked envelope junk journal beginnings is in here somewhere. So I've already started kind of thinking about what I want to put on that. And I'm going to walk you through this just so you can see, how my head works. But the first thing I had to do was do some experiments, and that's why I wanted to go ahead and share this video with you in case you're doing this for the first time, and you'll benefit from the things I've already tried. So I needed to find out how many pieces of paper I'd want to glue together for different weights of cardstock, and I kind of covered that in the last video. But I've learned a couple things since then that I think are helpful. So if you go back and watch that one, you'll see that I use glue stick, just regular over Old Elmer's. I've now bought another brand, so I'll let you know if I think one's better than the other. But this is what I've been using so far. And I like this because I can start at one end and then just start, sticking it down. And I use my little plastic card. I've shown this a million times to smooth out bubbles. But when you use this glue stick, and I'll actually do a little sample here, is it kind of skips, you can't get full, uh-oh, that one's empty. Let's do a little one here. You can't get like full coverage. So when you put a glue stick on, and I like these purple ones because it lets me know what's wet and what's dry, but you can see how you miss little spots. And I figured out something that helps with that. So this is kind of how I put it together, and then I just work my way down. But then you end up, there's little voids in there. And where I kind of learned that a couple of ways is, as I was working this, even though it's pretty flat as far as bubbles go, just the wetness from the glue, it gives it kind of this ripply thing. And if you're going to go then and paint on this or anything, it's going to even get more wonky. So my solution was, I thought, well, if I heat this, then like how you do the wax paper and crayon kind of thing, that it'll kind of spread all that glue back out and re-engage that and kind of fill in those things. I loved how it came out. So this is 2 pieces of paper, and I don't know if you can see that in here, but that is like flatter than flat. There's not a bubble in there. And you know, when I first glue them together, they kind of look like this. They're a little bit, that waviness. I don't know if this is picking it up in there, but if you see that. So the 2 things it did, using my iron, and I just use it kind of on a silk, between silk and wool setting, no steam, because my goal is I want to dry this out. I want that glue to get spread out in between there so that I have a hard time telling if it's, you know, more than 1 piece of paper. And I just liked the texture. It kind of made it more smooth and just give me a nice flat base to start with. So that's one tip that I am enjoying doing, just getting my papers all ironed flat. So I figured out that I liked, for like a lightweight cardstock, just 2 pieces together was good. If you want to use for like the cover of a notepad, something like that, or even just a card that's going to pull in and out of a pocket, one more thickness is nice. So this would be good, like if I'm going to fold this to make little envelopes or pockets, that kind of thing. But if I want something that I need to grab or, you know, have a little bit more sturdiness, 3 layers works well for me. So I started out by kind of making a whole bunch of papers that are 2 layers so that I would have something to work with. And then I even put some gesso on some as a primer. But then I got to thinking, you know, I have to really start thinking about what I want my book to look like, what I'm going to use for color and that kind of thing, because I don't want to go and do a whole bunch of these and then not have them be useful. So I made a few so that I have some weights to play with. And then I just did some practice with some gesso on paper. Now, in the other video that I had done, I also showed, I don't know if you can see that, I have made lattice pattern out of this, and then I've gone over it with gesso because I thought this might be fun to use as book covers or just a background, something like that, when I needed something sturdy for a base for a pull-out card or whatever. Something that I'm not going to really write on this side. I want it to be decorative. But then the other side, I can do my gesso on this side, write lines on it even if I want, and that could be my side to write on. So I've done some of that. I haven't painted on any of it yet. I did a couple of samples. This one I wanted to show because I'm not going to do it like this. When I was putting these together, I think when I did a little bit of a demo, I was just putting the paper together and then I mounted it, and that worked better. This one I tried to do it as I was going on my paper. I was getting impatient and trying to do it too fast. Now I have this whole void inside where I don't have glue because I didn't glue that part. So I wouldn't suggest doing that. I think it's better to do the whole lattice and then glue it to a piece of paper. So I was just trying to be able to get my grid straighter. And so I thought, well, if I do it onto a book page, I'll have more things to kind of line up. So that was my experiment that I did not like. So save yourself some time unless you like that look. The other thing that I did on some that I don't really like is I had done 2 pieces of paper together and then I gessoed it. And it wasn't, it still is kind of, I can feel air voids inside between the 2 pieces of paper. I did this before I discovered the ironing idea. And I'll probably use this for something just so I don't waste it. But I don't like that idea now. If you saw the last video, and I don't know where that piece is because I think I've painted on it now, I showed a piece that had some bubble pattern that my iron did, and I thought it was kind of neat and I liked it, but I'm realizing now that those bubbles were because there was no glue underneath. And so depending on what I want to use it for, It could be decorative, but it's not something that I wanted to do for all my paper and do a bunch of it, because I feel like it's sloppy. It's just lumpy and bumpy, and it's always going to be that way. The other thing that I learned is I don't want to gesso and then iron. I'm better off to put my paper together, iron it flat, and then I'll show you, I actually started just painting with no gesso underneath. I didn't like how the gesso heated up with the iron. I just don't like it. So you can do your own experiment if you don't believe me, but I'm just thinking for what I want to do when it's the right thing to not gesso it. There might be times where I know it's something I'm going to write on that I do. So I'm just kind of showing you my experiments. So if you watched the last video again, I had made, I wanted some writing paper. And so that was another thing I needed. So I need, things to make envelopes out of, things to make tucks out of, and cards, and all that kind of fun stuff. But then I also needed writing paper. So if you watch that video, I took the biggest size book paper that I had. When you tear it out, you have a rough edge. So I took the fullest sheets I could find and then decided on a book size where I would have a little bit of an overhang. That way my signature can be here and I can just sew it in that way. So I made a whole bunch. These are just single sheets of book page, 2 coats of gesso on each side. And I just used this Liquitex, acrylic gesso, white, nothing fancy. So I would just use the cheap whatever. But it gave me some nice writing paper that I can actually put into a book. I did these pages before I did my stacked envelope journal, and I should have paid attention because I could have used these in the book, but they're a little too small. So I'm going to have to come up with another idea that I'm working on to have my main journal part of my book, the paper that's going to go in there. So I still have to work on that. But I wanted to kind of give you that idea. And I did write on some with just a regular pen, and it works fine. So that's just for some plain paper. I haven't tried like coffee staining this or anything after to see what'll happen with it. Again, I'm not sure that it won't make it all ripply. And right now it's nice and flat. So the one thing that you can do on this paper, because I believe I did iron this paper, is if you don't have 2 sheets glued together and then the gesso, it's okay. It actually works. What I do is I take 2, since I have plenty of book page, so that I don't ruin my iron or my ironing board, I just take a couple of pieces of this and I put a piece of whatever's painted in between, just a sandwich, and then I iron that, flip it over, iron that. So that worked okay. I think what happened that I didn't like the whole chemical reaction of with my iron was when I had 2 pieces glued together and then gesso on it. I just didn't like that. So that's a couple of little tips just to show you what it looks like without gesso, and just to paint a color. I just did a hot pink over the text, and I don't mind that you still see the text through there. It's a book that we're recycling. And part of my goal in my book that I'm doing, I have 2 things. I want to pay homage to the fact that it's book page, but I also would like someone to look at it and not believe that this whole thing was made out of book page. So I want some so camouflaged that you don't realize that's what it is. So that's kind of 2 little challenges I'm giving myself. So this is no gesso, just paint, and that works fine. And I did not iron this one. This is kind of what it looks like when it dries. And then you go and iron and you get these nice flat ones. So that's kind of that. So when I decided, and this one actually has 2 pieces, and I wanted to show it because this, it doesn't have all the glue in between. This is before I kind of figured out the whole ironing it right away to make sure you have, it's become kind of one piece of paper. But I wanted to, you can kind of see the bubble in there. That you can still use this. It's just, different experiments. So I decided then the first thing that I needed to do after I kind of figured out my different paper weights that I needed was I wanted to kind of start bringing in some color. And I decided I want to kind of try to mimic those papers that I like. So I'm going to do them in mixed media style. Now, a lot of you probably have a lot of mixed media experience. I'm kind of new to all this, and that's where I started watching videos, was to learn mixed media techniques. So these aren't finished, but I wanted, for the people that are brand new to doing that, I want to show you kind of the steps that I use so that you can make your own. And it's hard when you look at a completed piece. If there are like 10 steps in that, you have a hard time breaking them down to which ones you do first and how you end up. So this is just kind of my formula that I am working with. So it's kind of a lot of fun too. You can have little kids help you do this. Just make sure you have a plastic over your table. But I would just take blank book page, unprimed, nothing on there. And I would just get this is my box of acrylic paints. I don't really have any new ones in here. This is just stuff that I had from crafting before. I had to throw away a bunch of dry ones, but this is what I had left. And you can see I don't have a lot of bright color in there. I don't, they're all kind of neutrals from old craft projects. So I just use what I have. I do also have a little box of, somebody had given me a set of actual artist paints, and these are, I've separated them so I have all the acrylics here. Some of these are really old and probably not even working, but it's more colors. So I thought, I have these. I'm not an artist. Maybe I don't know that I'll ever learn to paint, but I thought I'm going to take that out and maybe I can find some bright colors there. And then I haven't used these yet, but I do have some distress oxides in different colors, and these are more colorful. So I'll probably want to use these too. So I kind of just grabbed anything colorful that I had, and then I literally started, and I think I'll do one sheet just so you can see, is I take a few pieces of paper and maybe a couple of colors. Let's just grab some random things. And I literally would just, I don't know if I'm all in the frame here, but I would literally just kind of drop some paint on, and maybe not even on all of them. And then grab another color. I always like these two together. And you can also do this putting it on your mat, which I've used that after this first step, or on a jelly plate, or if you have one of those. I'll show you what that is in a second. But I just do this, and I take my card and I literally just start making some kind of pattern on there. And it doesn't have to be any rhyme or reason. You can even take another piece and just whatever wants to come off. So this is really messy. You do a bunch of different ones. And then what I liked to do is I would take, maybe I would do a few and then alternate the colors so they're not all the same color. And then I'm even like, as I'm going, I'm kind of even doing that even though they're wet. So I kind of end up with a pile of, there's not a ton of paint on there, so they dry pretty quick. But I just keep my little wipe to clean up whatever's left. And then I pull my heat gun out. And I just keep that here. And I'm not going to do it right now, but I just heat with a heat gun. And these are not so ripply that I can go and do a next step of color on there, and just kind of layer that on. And then if I'm feeling like they're too ripply and not quite dry enough for me to continue, that's when I go iron them, because that heat is going to flatten out your paper again, and it's going to take any extra moisture out of this. I mean, I can touch this already. It really soaks into the paper because it's not primed. So that was kind of my first step. And then the next step that I did is I take a different tool. And so it could be, I have some old screen here that I use. I have one of these rubber combs that has 4 different, this is kind of like just a little brush. And then these are like little triangle teeth, and then just different shapes, and use this. But you can use a plastic fork, anything. Just look around. You have things that you can use that you don't realize that will just give some texture. And let me show you. This one is using one of the teeth on the comb. And same thing is I would just drop some paint on there and then grab it and pull it around with this. You can do straight lines, you can do curving lines, you can do diagonal. And I think I have little samples of, let's see, maybe I just go through these, and you can see I have different colors there. That one has a few more steps. This one you can see some of the teeth marks. They're just all kind of, this one has some diagonal on it. So they all kind of look random, but when there's this color over here and this color over here, then they'll all go together. So even though they're all, you know, kind of different things, I used the same kind of tools. And just did a bunch of, some brights, some that are more pastel. Just, I like to have a variety. So some very bright, some not as bright, pastel, you know, colors that you just think they'll look good together. Sometimes they get mixed up and kind of muddy, but even those, you know, end up looking good. Like these are not a bright color, but then put with a bright color and then another deep color. I just think they all work. So after I did those kind of first couple of layers, then I took what I'm going to call textural stencils. And these are all kind of new to me because the only stenciling I did before would be if it was like an actual design on something. So when I got into this mixed media stuff, I realized for the backgrounds, textures are really good. Now, if you're doing something, a piece of artwork or a different kind of project, you don't mind if those textures actually, you know, glue a piece of this onto your paper. But when you're doing a book, you might not want any actual mounted textures or anything until your last part. So I'm trying to get texture in my background. So I don't want it to be thick. I just want it to be visual texture. One thing that I really like to do with these, if you're doing mixed media, is to use like heavy gessos or spackly kind of weights of things to actually put that over. And I've shown that before in this book. It's a nice way that I like to use stencils. It's raised because I've used a texture medium and done the stencil. But for my book pages, I don't want too much of that. I might want some as embellishment, but I want to keep my book from not being too bulked up. So I wanted to kind of get that textural feel just with paint. So to do that, I'm using these different stencils. And you can kind of see, you don't have to even be pretty about it because it's going to be background in the end. Nobody's going to notice that there's a smudge there or anything like that. So same thing for these different ones I have, you know, this one kind of, I don't even know what you'd call that, but let's see if there's a name on it here. Mini Tile Textures by Jamie E. And then this is kind of like a burlap texture, and that's a Tim Holtz one. This is another one. It's like little hexagons. This one's from Deco Art America. And then another Tim Holtz that just kind of is messy bubbles. So just something, you can mimic this with things if you don't have the stencils. Before I bought those stencils, like I said, I used to use just screen. You can kind of get different weaves of screen, and then you'll get a different texture. You can use other things, like I've used pieces of foam, just packing material and stuff, or bubble wrap. You can, you know, put the paint down and then press that on there, and that'll give you a textural feel. So, you know, Brillo pads, anything that's just going to give you some textural looking thing. So when I did that, I would, I'm using stencils, so I would just drop some paint on my craft sheet and then use just some kind of dauber. I really like these, but I don't have enough of these Velcro things to put on. The way I do it, because I'm kind of sloppy, they end up getting kind of chewed up, mostly because I'm impatient. And instead of dabbing like this, I find myself, if I don't have too much paint, I'll be going like this. And so sometimes the stencil will kind of eat up my brush. So either buy cheap ones, makeup sponges, you can just use those, something you don't mind that you're gonna trash it doing this when you do a lot. So same thing as I would just kind of have my pile of paper, and then I would grab one, and whatever color I happen to be working on, I'll do a few spots, then I'll grab another one, do a few spots until I run out of that color, and then maybe I'd grab a different color and do a different stencil. So that way you kind of get a mixture throughout all your papers, and like I said, doing that, it kind of cross-pollinates all that color so that in the end, your entire pile looks good together. The next step after that is, where'd my wipey go here? The next step that I did after that texture is some larger stencil. And I'm even going to go larger than that. I just haven't gotten to that point. But one thing I like to do is use other little things. So this is a wine cork. Have plenty of those. And I just, same thing, go on my paint. And then I would just put it here and do a swirl. I would dip it each time just so they're consistent for what I wanted to do in my design. But you can even go randomly, whatever. I find that if you do it and you twist it, the paint comes off nicer, and it gives it kind of a swirl, a little swirly texture too. In this one, you can see the orange underneath. I twisted and swirled it, but then when I went over top with another color, I actually just took one of these that's a little bit smaller. That one's not smaller. One of these, I have more somewhere, but anyway, a smaller one in a different color, and that makes the center one. And then I went over it even a third time with a third color just to give it another texture. And that one I just, I just pounced so that it gave it a different texture. So, you can tell this is, a child could do this. And you just eyeball things, kind of do a little here, a little there, and move it around your paper just to give it some interest. And then let's see, the next one I did was I took an actual stencil, and I don't have it out here, but you can see it's just kind of an arrow chevron pattern. And then I did the same thing, and I did them on different colors. You can see how they come out, looking different depending on what color paint. And I, kind of randomly put them around. These are the papers I have left. These are my leftover papers. And I'll show you why. I'm still going to use these. But once I got to that point, they're kind of coming along. I still want to do a lot more layers on top of that. Before I get that far, I thought, you know what? I've been doing that slow stitching embroidery at night. And these colors are all pretty bright. And the slow stitching pieces I'm working on, some of them are finished, some of them aren't finished, and I need to do more. But I thought, my embroidery thread colors do not go at all with these colors. So I need to kind of see if they're going to work together, because I'm kind of spending a lot of time working on both these things. And it'd be nice if I could use those, and then it would help guide me in my design. So yesterday I decided I better pull all that out now before I go further, because some of these papers I want to do many more layers so that the paper itself would look nice as a card, maybe then with an embellishment. These are not far enough along for me, but I wanted to kind of help guide myself, I guess. So I took all the little embellishments that I've been playing around with, and this is how my brain works. I had made this little flower, for example, out of paper, and this is just book page, 2 pieces glued together, and then I just freehand drew with a black pen and got some watercolors and just started playing with this. My idea was then to take this, add it to something, and do some stitching on it too. So who knows what this is going to end up color-wise in the end, but right now this is what it looks like. So I thought I need to take, we're going to play with this pile. I need to take all these papers, and I go like this, and I would literally say, oh, it looks good with that one. And I pull all the ones that I think it looks good with, and you can see, even though it's a different color, all these papers are different because I did that cross-pollinating thing. They all can work for me because I know I can add more if I need to, but it helps kind of guide me. Like if I wanted to use that one, it has a little bit of this wine color. Maybe I want to add a little bit more of that pinker color or this metallic that's in there to kind of pull it all together. So that's kind of how my mind works. And then I grab one that I think I want to use, And now I can take it steps further, and I have something to take a jumping off point. So I can add more to this paper. I can add my stitching. I can do it right onto here. You know, it just kind of helps me think about what I might want to use this for in my actual book. So that was one I came up with. And then I had been working on this mandolin. This was, again, made out of book paper. And I had used gesso on this. So before I got too far along, I found in some of my other ones, you'll see, I didn't like how white my gesso was. So I took before I get too far along, I took my vintage photo distress oxide and just kind of dirtied all that up because I don't want it so white. So I've done some stitching. I'm going to do more. I did a little bit more last night. This inner circle here, I made from one of these papers that once I chose which ones I think I want to use, I knew I was free to start cutting up some of these other ones. If I want it just to be background, maybe I don't go further with this paper. I just use this as kind of color background. So I took my my scallop, my 1.5 inch scallop punch, and I made this little scallop. This whole thing was made with the 3 inch scallop. So I made another little one, and then I did a circle. That little lighter aqua color back there is another, you know, one of my papers, and I don't know what I did with the ones I've been punching already. I think I put them aside, but I've taken, you know, one of these papers, and I just found a spot I liked and cut that out. And then the flower, the orange flower, again, is from some of this paper I've started painting, and I just did my little small, my little small flower punch to make that one. And then I stuck them all together on here and then started slow stitching on those more. So hopefully I have not been out of range on this thing, but anyway, that's how far I am. I'm going to keep doing some more just because I'm having fun with it. But I chose this little paper to maybe use part of that for something that I'm going to do with this. I still don't know what I'm doing with it yet, but at least I pull this one out knowing it might have a home. And you can see too, I've also done some stamping. This is just a text, because that's going to be my next thing. Some stamping, and then some more larger scale. I just used this Stampers Anonymous, has some little text stamps. And these you just do randomly. I didn't use black ink for that. I used espresso, dark espresso, I think it's called, for my stamping. And another thing that I learned is, you know, we use baby wipes to clean everything. Well, if you use archival ink, which is what this is, because if I'm going to go over this with some sprays, you know, some spattery things or more stenciling, I'm going to be introducing more water-soluble things. So I wanted my stamping to be archival ink so that it doesn't smear. So I went ahead and used that, and I made a mess everywhere because I was just stamping on all my different papers. So to clean that off your hands and your mat before it's dry, just rubbing alcohol on a paper towel works. So you get all that cleaned off. Okay, so we've started paper, we've stamped a little bit, we've stenciled a little bit. Now I'm kind of picking out my things just so I kind of have a direction. This little one I made, I wasn't even sure I liked it at all, and I still may not use it, I don't know. But that background, that little green that you see, that little lattice, is actually, I don't have it in here now, I don't think, but it's actually from like an avocado bag. You know, I've been saving potato bags and avocado bags, and this is one from potatoes. But this gives me a nice thin, I could, you know, use that as a texture and just glue that down. And I may use some of that too. But that bright green was not really, actually here's the piece. That bright green is not really, it's kind of a little primary color for me. But I used it because I wanted to see how it would work to do my stitching over it. So that was just a little practice thing. It was too much green, so I went over and stitched the heck out of it. But and then I went over with my Distress Oxide Vintage Photo because I didn't like how white it was. And I think then I still didn't like how white it was, and I had already done all the stitching, so I can't get in those little tiny spots. So I think I even sprayed it with some of my mica spray that I used to, I'm trying to find which one I used here. Maybe this one. Oh, that's pewter, not that one. I think I used this one. This one is tarnished brass. So a couple of squirts with this. I've used this before if you watched other videos, but it just, let's see, it just gives it a metallic look. This has a ton because I sprayed like every color I had just playing around one day just to make some kind of metallic looking paper. I'm just trying to find, you know, different colors, different textures, different sheens that might work in my book. So because that was such a bright green, I did have one of these papers that's bright. So I thought, well, that looks okay with that. And then I used some kind of blues and different things. So I might put these two together some way, somehow, and those kind of go. So you can kind of see where I'm headed. So what I do is I kind of pull out paper so that I don't veer off my direction now, and I just clip them together. So for my book that I've got going here, I have pulled out, let me unclip these just to show you how I kind of was thinking. So I have my first one. I went ahead and I tried to start thinking about what I want to go inside, what I might need for the outside size-wise, because I like to have as many tucks and pockets and things as you can. So I made the little card. This has 3 weights. Now, I did this before I started painting all this paper, and I thought I want to get at the weight where I can still add another layer. So I'm thinking, you know, this is not going to be on here, but once I have these papers all painted, stitched, whatever I'm going to do to them, I can now just glue them onto this card and then maybe put gesso this side so it's white to write on or something. I don't know. So I guess I'm pointing that out because I shouldn't have maybe made this thicker than I needed to right now if I'm going to be adding 2 more pieces of paper onto that. It might get really thick. So I'm letting you know that I may just be using this as a pattern so that I can get it to the right thickness that I want. And then I just cut out a couple of these because I know I want to stitch these too. I'm thinking there'll be a little tab, and these were just with my oval punch, and I'll sandwich them just to give myself a little pull tab. And I think I want to stitch on here, so I don't know, and use 2 different papers. So that's why I've just kind of clipped them together. And then let's see. I had someone recently, while I'm thinking about it, I had made a Cricut pattern that was just private for my little tabs. Oops. I have like several different sizes of these tabs that I made. I made up this pattern and then I adjusted the sizes to a bunch of different ones. Anyway, somebody asked me for that. I shared them the link. I don't know if it worked or not. The first time she said it didn't, and I haven't heard since. So I've made it where I can share it with people I give the link to, but for some reason, I don't know if she's gotten it to work. So anyway, my point is, if anybody would like that pattern, just ask me and I'll see if I can make it where you can use it. Okay, so I kind of did that for each one. This one has an angled pocket, so I know something will go in there, probably just some kind of card, layered cards. I'm thinking I had done this band previously, and this was with book page. If you saw that video, I showed how I did this. And it can fit right here. So I want to use that, and I could make it like a pocket, so then I can actually stick something else behind there. And I kind of thought it looks nice with that paper. So that's kind of where I've stopped there on that one. This was one that I haven't finished even stitching on yet. But like I said, I wanted to start looking at them with my papers, and I liked it with this paper. So now this will help me decide what other colors I end up putting in here. And then I might need to add some color to my paper too, if I want them to look good together. So that, and then I decided I wanted to do like a library card kind of pocket with a little pull out. So I've kind of just done this again as kind of a pattern that I may just cover all this. When I first started doing all this, it was kind of weird to be doing it all in just black and white book paper, and it just got so boring to me. I mean, that could be a whole look on its own, you know, don't even introduce other things other than maybe your stitching or whatever writing you do. But that's when I kind of thought it'd be fun to mix up doing some things that you would never even guess that it was paper, book page paper, and then other things kind of let it peek through, you know. So here was another one. These are just another bunch of, I went a little further with this one. This was before I decided I didn't like having the gesso on there. But all of these papers, this was a little piece that I had done, and this was much more fall colors. It's like green and brown, and so I didn't think it was going to go well with these bright things, but I found one. I thought it looked okay with that, you know, just different ones that I could make work, you know. So that's just kind of where I got stuck. And then I really liked it on this was one of those book cover samples with the scrim. And I think I might let myself use scrim. Fabric, I don't, you know, my goal was to not use printed cardstock paper. So I think I'll let myself add some fabrics into my slow stitching too, just for some more collage kind of work. So I kind of clipped these together. And speaking of fabric, I'm loving scrim, so I'm sure I'll use some of that. Plus it's very thin, and I'm trying to keep this thin. But the other thing I've been saving that I laughed because somebody gave me this comment on one of my videos, and I just laughed because I already did the same thing. And you know, you think you're the only weirdo, you know, the only one that does this, but I saved my baby wipes. You know, they have paint all over them, but they look kind of cool. The ones with glue, it's a little harder, but they're just colorful. So you can cut things out. You know, I cut a heart out of that because it's like fabric, and then you can stitch this in with your slow stitching too. I like that idea. So I'm holding on to that because I might use some of that in there, especially the wipes that I'm using to clean up this paint. It's going to go with this book because it's used to clean up this paint. So anyway, it's kind of how my brain works. This was the other bookmark that I was playing around with when I was looking for that last project, my book cover finish. And I love how it looked with all the colors that I was going with that. So that may end up being an actual bookmark in this book that I just tuck in somewhere. But I like that a lot. And then I actually even liked that with this paper. This has a lot of texture. This is that one I was saying that had all the bubbles on the back. See, you can actually even see where it's broke through. It's broke through. So that's why I don't recommend putting the gesso on first. But I do like, it feels like fabric almost itself. So I think this one might be neat to stitch on. And I thought about, you know, it looks good on that too. So I went ahead and kind of fussy cut around it, but then I think I want to stitch it onto whatever, you know, glue it and stitch it onto whatever I'm working on. So that might be something I use in here. And then this pocket was another short pocket, a small one. So I thought that was kind of cute. Might be cute on something, and it looked good with these papers. I thought I can add a little, it does have a little of that wine color in there actually. So that one. So you can see this kind of just gets me thinking more and gives me kind of some little direction. I think these were all just more papers that may have looked good with something. Because I have them clipped together now, I don't remember. I think my next thing I need to do is start making sticky notes with my ideas, because if I get sidetracked, which I always do, doing something totally different for a day or so, like today, now I forget what I was going to do, you know. So that's why this video also helps. If I totally forget, I can go back and watch it myself. So that's kind of where I'm stuck now. So I'm to that point, but I think this helped me kind of figure out my paper situation. And now I can, these different things that I have, finish them up to kind of coordinate so that they don't look like they don't belong in the same book. And then I think my next thing kind of at the same time is I'll really start going through each of these pages to figure out what other pockets I might want to glue on and what they might need, that kind of thing. I started playing, for some reason I woke up the other middle of the night again, and I had this idea because I have all these little hearts. You know what, it seems like flowers are going to go in here. Mandalas, kind of a boho thing. I have some stencils that I want to use that are kind of these kind of things I think will look neat in here. Some paisley things that I haven't pulled out yet. But I was thinking these all might be kind of neat things to do some slow stitching, you know, combo painted on a piece of paper and then slow stitch over that. So I might do some of that. So it kind of is giving me a way to go. So I'm thinking that hearts, I have some feathers that I'm thinking would, a feather stencil that would be neat, and that kind of thing. But I thought of, you know, those forever stamps. If you're from United States, we have, when you buy a stamp, once they raise the price, as long as you bought it, it says forever on it. It's, you don't have to add to it. So I thought I'm going to make my own forever stamps and put a little heart and then put forever under there. So I thought those would be cute for some envelopes or different things. So I need to make a whole bunch of those, just different little things like that. This little flower here, this was my very first just freehand slow stitching thing. And somebody had asked me what stitches those are. So I answered her. And basically it's this inner blue part that you see. If you remember or have seen on my Facebook page, I guess, I don't think I put it in a video, but I'm making my own handmade paper for my cards that go in my gift boxes for my jewelry. And I actually punched that donut shape out from that paper with my reinforcement hole punch. And I like doing that because it made me, I had a center, then I had my donut, and I stitched around that. I put French knots in the middle, and then this is just a lazy daisy stitch, uneven, in two different colors to make the outsides of the flowers. So I thought, well, that would be fun to do a bunch of those. I liked making those. They didn't take forever. And I just like how they look. So I actually had this top from you pull off the coffee can. And so I thought, I wonder if I could punch that with my reinforcement punch, and you can. So now I have some little metallic donuts that will be cute in some flowers too. So me just sharing my little brainstorms here. And then this is one of my, can't see it on there, one of my baby wipes. I just cut a heart out of that. So I think that'd be cute to slow stitch on something very contrasting in color. It needs to be a big contrast. So that's where I'm at. I'm going to leave off there. I'm going to do some more slow stitching tonight. I've spent the entire day today sewing buttons on neck warmers and getting those listed in my Etsy shop. So that kept me busy today. So tomorrow I think I want to spend a little more time on this guy. So I hope you enjoy this video. Again, give me a thumbs up if you did. Keep watching, hit subscribe so you don't miss out, and join me on this whole little fun challenge. So have a great rest of your day or evening, and go make something. Bye.